We're here today to talk about some alarming problems at our country's premier law enforcement agencies. The latest report from the Department of Justice Inspector General outlines a number of problems with the conduct of both law enforcement officers and the agencies that manage them. That report outlined a number of key problems. First, law enforcement personnel at home and abroad engaged in reprehensible sexual harassment and misconduct that jeopardized our national security. Second, the agencies where they work mishandled their responses to those incidents by failing to properly report them, leading to insufficient punishment. And third, the FBI and the DEA tried to hide these incidents from the Inspector General by improperly withholding information and encouraging employees not to cooperate with the Inspector General. Hiding information from the Inspector General is simply and totally unacceptable. The Department of Justice Inspector General report documents a number of highly concerning findings about Federal law enforcement. One of the most shocking incidents Mr. Horowitz described in his report involved DEA agents in Colombia partying with prostitutes paid for by drug cartels. While the DEA agents were spending time with those prostitutes, local Colombian police were watching the agents' guns and property. The fact that this happened was bad enough. But none of these agents were really even punished by the DEA. Most of the agents involved were suspended for a few days and allowed to return to work with their security clearances in full. Based on the testimony we have read from the DEA administrator, she says she doesn't have the power to simply fire these people. I don't buy it. The American public doesn't buy it. And for the thousands of men and women who serve honorably, they're patriotic, they work hard, they put their lives on the line, this administration, this DEA administrator, has got to hold those people accountable and get them out of there. If this is the kind of behavior that they're going to engage in, it's totally unacceptable. They should not have a security clearance, and they should be fired. Some of these agencies compromised our national security and then essentially got a vacation. The punishment for engaging in this type of behavior was 2 to 10 days off paid leave, or non-paid leave. That sounds like a vacation to me. It doesn't sound like punishment. To suggest that these people couldn't be fired or do something more severe is simply unacceptable. And again, I want to remind our members, this is a matter of national security. We're talking about people's lives. And the DEA, as much as anybody, puts people overseas in very tough and difficult situations. But when we have bad apples who repeatedly do the same type of behavior, compromise our national security, then they need to lose their national security clearances and they need to be fired. The IG report found that this was hardly an isolated incident. The report highlights repeated abuses of sexual misconduct, including unreported cases of ATF training instructors sleeping with their students, using government vehicles to facilitate inappropriate sexual relationships, and managers sexually harassing employees and asking them to watch pornography. The report also makes clear that when law enforcement agents engage in inappropriate and illicit sexual behavior, the agency they work for oftentimes just simply looks the other way. To use the IG's language, these cases of sexual misconduct are treated as, quote, local management issues, end quote. In other words, they're basically swept under the rug. Adding to the concerns raised in this report is the fact that the DEA and the FBI tried to hide these incidents from their own Inspector General. Both the DEA and the FBI went out of their way to impede and delay the Inspector General's report. According to the report, the DEA and the FBI delayed responding to requests for information, provided heavily redacted documents, and even told their employees not to cooperate. For example, the Inspector General asked the DEA to run more than 40 search terms to search their database and identify relevant information. The 3 terms, 3 out of the more than 40 that they ran included sex, prosty, and exposure. Not included were brothel, escort, harass, rape, solicit, and the list goes on. Why exclude? Why exclude the search terms that the Inspector General is asking for? It's not the DEA's responsibility to weed that out. Your job is to allow the Inspector General to get in there, get his fingernails dirty, and go figure out the truth. But that's not what happened. I want to put up a slide here. When the DEA finally did provide information after significant delay, in some cases, documents were so heavily redacted, the IG couldn't even tell what the documents are about. This is the type of documentation that the Inspector General was given by you at the DEA. And we want answers as to why that is. The good men and women who work at the Inspector General's office do tough, difficult work. But they can't do anything if they get that kind of material from the DEA. And it's not just the DEA, it's the FBI. It's the other agencies as well. It's not acceptable. We have a lot of questions for our witnesses who are here today to testify on both behalf of the DEA and the FBI. It's incumbent upon the leadership of these law enforcement agencies to weed out employees who put our security at risk, embarrass the country, and break the law. To the good men and women, the overwhelming majority of men and women who do their job in a patriotic, hard-working way, put their lives on the line, God bless you. We need you, we love you, we care for you. But it's also irresponsible of management to not deal with the bad apples. People are going to make mistakes, okay? But these weren't simple mistakes. This went on and on and on, multiple reports of sex parties, of loud parties, to the point that the landlord was actually complaining back to our government about how out of control our own federal employees were serving overseas. Again, the people who cause these problems, I recognize, are a small population, a small percentage of the total population who have not been held accountable for their dangerous lapses in judgment. I would ask unanimous consent. I'd like to enter two documents into the record. First of all is from our Attorney General, Eric Holder, on April 10th of this year, a prohibition on the solicitation of prostitution. How bad is it? One of his last acts as the Attorney General, Eric Holder, has to actually go forward and issue a memorandum explaining to people that you can't do this again. It's almost embarrassing that he has to do this. I appreciate that he did it to clarify if there's some misunderstanding out there, but I'd like to enter that into the record. I also want to enter into the record a document response. This is to the Assistant Inspector General for Evaluations and Inspections, the Office of Inspector General, to Nina, I'm going to slaughter her last name, Pelletier, I guess. And it's from Michael Dixon, who's the Acting Deputy Chief Inspector, Office of Inspection, saying that, I'm going to read this quote here from the very last line, DEA did a second review of the cases the OIG reviewed to determine if the Office of Professional Responsibility had appropriately and thoroughly investigated these allegations. It was found through the review that the investigations were investigated properly through DEA's disciplinary process for related misconduct. Basically telling the Inspector General that, yeah, we did everything we could, that it was properly investigated properly through DEA's disciplinary process. That's a sad day for the DEA.